This follows on the previous 3 videos in this series, so watch those first for context. The cannon can hit Helos at over 4Ks, if you're lucky, but its spread at longer ranges can miss narrow targets, and any maneuvering or speed change will likely mean projectiles in flight already will miss. You'll have to wait till they fly in a consistent flight path with unchanging speeds or get up close. Iglas conveniently point up, are easy to use, though they are easily decoyed, aren't as reliable point blank unless the target's flying straight away from you on a nice clean flight path. Vichers outrange most weapons other helis can throw at you, and you already carry them usually. Not great point blank unless you perfectly line up that shot, and maybe less effective versus jets flying across your view that just outrace the pure pursuit missiles. And if you need to shoot upwards at a jet flying high, you'll need to pitch up, slowing down and maybe flying backwards. Versus Helos, Iglas outrange the R60 missiles a bit, but if you're facing a chopper with 80 gems, your Iglas are practically guaranteed to be outranged and you're going to get launched on first. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say you can escape by doing a barrel roll. Probably best bet then is getting behind nearby cover. If you get lucky with your Igla detecting the heat source of the missile and intercepting it, that's really rolling the dice, and often they can spam out 80 gems faster than you can prep and fire Iglas. AI Apaches seem to laser you from just under 10Ks and fire the laser guided Hellfires from just under 9. I don't think you should try outranging them with Vichers or fire from much closer than 8.5Ks. That said, assuming you both are flying head on and they launch first, assuming your lock holds and they don't bleed off the missile's energy someone crazy maneuvering, your Vicher is much faster and should reach them long before their Hellfire gets its terminal guidance. Now, while the Hellfires might not have proximity fusing, it's still a gamble. Now, you can't always guarantee safety with the AI's damage model. I've seen them sometimes maintain perfect guidance at odd angles while they're in really bad shape after taking a nose hit, where you'd figure the MTADs would be. As far as I know, the Lima radar-guided Hellfires weren't built as super maneuverable missiles, single tracking air targets, but maybe they are. Not much information out there I know of, so we'll need to see how ED implements it in DCS. But either way, Apaches are a tough target. You might be equal-ish range with them. You outrange Heinz. I don't know how to handle sharks. We don't kill our own. Now in this next section I'm going to use the word track, specifically meaning the target isn't moving too rapidly across your view, or too radically, and that you're able to keep the Schwal tracking gates on or near the target, either locking it, slewing to stay near it, or keeping your helmet sight stable near the target, and that you can loosely pilot to point your nose in that direction, whether that means yawing over or pitching up. This usually means your flight path should be stable, as you bouncing around won't help. Obviously the cannon's wider vertical arc has a wider tolerance for pointing your nose at the target than the Vichers, which will especially be harder to achieve if you need to pull up more than say 15 degrees, in which case you also need to watch about losing your altitude. Ranged means you have the laser ranging at least as far out as the target. That might not be super accurate, mostly just for the Vichers to ensure they can go past 4Ks. So, one possible decision tree. Use Vichers if your target is over 5Ks and you can track and range. 8.5 if the heli is flying towards you, less if they're going perpendicular or flying away. Under 5Ks, if you can track, Vicher, otherwise Igla. Under 2Ks, if you can lock, then cannon, otherwise Igla. Few hundred meters, just gun with a helmet sight, and adjust by looking at the traces without trying to lock or range. If your flight path is really unstable, bore sight the cannon. Now this decision tree is obviously very situational. Of course, you can easily lock up a helo flying dead ahead of you in a straight line, or get the igloos to track nicely if the missiles won't have to turn hard. If you need to pull up like crazy to get that missile off, then igloos are better. So ranges matter and your ability to track. And what you can track is going to depend on how stable your helmet sight is and your real-life controls, your ability to stabilize the helo quickly, distance, speed of the target, and whether you need to dodge around, stay low to mitigate radar missiles, etc. So unfortunately, it's something where you can look at my footage and my little decision tree to get a baseline, but you're going to have to play around for yourself to find that out. Same with figuring out if or when. It's easy to steer a missile by guiding the circle on the HUD versus going heads down at the screen. You're also going to need to develop a memory and routine of knowing which settings for manual mode, anti-air, etc. are activated, have the things you need bound so that you can press them quickly, so that you can do that without needing to look down and scramble with the mouse in the heat of combat. You can set up some quick missions with a mission editor, just adding in some helos or jets for practice, especially initially if you set them to hold fire in their rules of engagement. So what if you don't like memorizing which weapon when? Or you just like throwing all the hate at once? Set burst length to long, manual mode, laser lock the target, select anti-air pylons, cool the igloo with weapon release, then lock, switch to outer pylons, rifle off 2 Vickers, go back to AS stations, pitch down and fire the igloo when you get tone, tap release, then lock to start cooling the next igloo. Then gun select and squeeze the gun trigger to volley off a burst. Go back to igloos, rinse and repeat. That's an igloo, 2 Vickers, and possibly 20 rounds of 30mm hailstorm heading towards the target at the same time. Against jets, maybe don't try it. They have the high ground. Their weapons usually outrange yours. They have dedicated air-to-air sensors and weapons, and if they're smart, they can simply choose to remain up high and far out until they spot you, fire and break away before you get a good shot off. While Vickers have a higher top speed, their pure pursuit makes them less suited, hitting jets flying perpendicular than igloos. If the target is coming straight at you, and you could lock them, or at least laze them to get extra range, use Vickers. If the jet is circling up close, low and slow, like it might while it's dogfighting a friendly or trying to strafe other ground forces, Vickers might work. But generally in that situation, the igloos have a better time tracking, at least until the flares start coming out. And you don't have to pitch up as much with where they're bore-sighted. Either way, your tools require jets to be low and slow. And if it's a player-controlled jet that doesn't make mistakes like circling low and slow but zooms away from an unseen angle, beams out popping flares early rather than sticking around, odds are you will lose. If the jet is coming straight at you, then 1.5Ks or closer, the cannon can also be viable. High rate of fire would help, but you might need to be doing dodging as well as pitching up to give the shots the elevation they need. Problem is, if the jet changed speed or maneuvered around, your ranging may no longer be accurate, and re-ranging the last second might break the lock. And trying to manually spray tracer fire gets difficult. If a jet is parking up right above you, go home. You have little visibility through the cockpit armor, and pointing weapons on target is hard. Even if you have low weight and lots of spare power to pitch up 60 degrees, you'll start accelerating backwards until the shock naturally spins around. And if you had fast forward speed, you'll be bleeding that out very quickly as you rise out of the ground clutter. So in terms of jets, in terms of a list of procedures to tick through about what you're going to do, or use rather, if you have or get the uncommon opportunity for a shot. If you lock them coming straight in, Vigor from 8Ks. 3Ks or closer if you lock them retreating. If they're close and perpendicular, Igla. In any event, staying low in the ground clutter will help avoid them getting locked and force them lower down. Just ensure you're not on a perfect hover, as their missiles may still fly true when they lose lock. So a little movement helps, but slow enough that you still get lost in the ground clutter, maybe under 50 kph. And don't scrape off the ground. Any nearby impacts on the dirt will wash back onto you. Now in terms of your flying and maneuvering, don't be a sitting duck. Keep changing your flight path if there's incoming fire or you suspect there's incoming fire. Change it often enough that it throws off lead without dancing you back into a volley that they launched a while back. Now in a Helo dogfight or airquake, or whatever you want to call it, speed is important. Normally, personally, I'd say standoff is best, as in if you know you're out of range of any threats, then stay that way, whether it means hovering or doing racetracks. But if you're going to be in range and in sight of being shot, keep your speed up. Now, unguided stuff or barely guided stuff like turret missiles might not track that well if you're flying perpendicular to them really fast, and especially with the occasional course change. Against Helos, most of them don't have radar guided things, so notching is not the ultimate move. And some of them can contrast lock you, in which case you're just providing a nice broad profile for them to hit if you're flying side on. Dead straight at them or away from them might not be your best move either. You have to change the angle relative to them, so moving sideways or up and down. With its power to weight and coaxial rotor system, the Ka-50 has quite a bit of power in a hover and climb rate. More collective will make you climb, but also maneuver a little faster as long as you don't do crazy things and mash your blades. So get that collective up early and smoothly if you're planning powerful turns and acceleration. And so you end up in a merge, so to speak. I don't believe speed is everything, it's a heli. Within limits you can turn on dime and move any way you want. If you swivel around before they do, get a track and fire off Vigor, it won't matter that they've pushed by at 120 knots and porpoise up and down a little. If it were purely a gunfight, then the speed might matter more. But you're still dealing with the fact that it's an articulating cannon that can lead and elevate and doesn't need you maintaining speed on their tail as much as getting those hits while still in range. And you'll be turning a little slower when you're at higher speed. So maybe fast circle speed isn't life in such a point blank dance. But don't go be in a dead still hover either. Keep dancing, just consider moving in other directions now. And just think it through. If you're going to bank left, you know how it'll affect your aim, since you're both pilot and gunner. If you're maneuvering in such close combat, do pay attention to your vertical velocity, so you don't go into settling with power or VRS. And if you just raise the collective quickly, listen. If it starts going quiet, you probably dropped your rotor RPMs, so reduce collective to get your blades up to speed again before you start falling out of the sky or losing generators and thus the target lock. So get aim and nose on target ASAP, but stay in control of your helicopter. If you're not in control, consider breaking away and getting behind cover. Maybe an escape climb works, maybe not. If anything, these close-up dogfighting, so to speak, maneuvers, they're going to test your practice, because they're doing extreme maneuvers and you're going to want to be tempted to do crazy things, and it's going to be a case of you having familiarity with the helicopter in terms of knowing when you can do what and when you should be doing what, at what speed, at what rate. as well as having the confidence of quickly assessing what your parameters are and whether you're falling out of the sky or in control. So it's worth practicing a few rapid maneuvers that still keep you within safe flight parameters. If you do merge with another helo, outside of trying to maintain eyes on them as much as possible, so you don't lose them, and keeping your flight parameters so you don't fall out of the sky or lose control, there are a few things that you can do as sort of upkeep while you're busy turning. If you were locked when the target flies by, the tracking gate would probably be massive, as it would have grown as they approached. Resetting the schval doesn't automatically shrink your gate back to a normal size that it can lock up something a bit further away again. So while you're turning, shrink your tracking gate size, and then either reset or encage your schval so it's closer by where you expect the target to be. So you're not waiting for it to slew over to where the target is while you're desperately trying to get a lock once you've turned around. Now you can easily lose sight of your target with all that canopy armor, which is less ideal given you only have one pair of eyes, whereas all the other helos have a second seater or door gunners, maybe even articulate guns. So up close with a shark gets dicey. Now, do you want to take this shot, start evading into cover, or turn preemptively to slip in behind the target? That's a call or gamble you're going to have to make. And versus a fast-moving jet, you'll need to weigh that as maybe you're not going to get another angle as good as this. That on the next pass they'll orbit away and stay out of range and fire from out of sight. So there's things to consider. In a nutshell, you've got various weapons on dealing with aerial targets, each with different conditions where they work at. There's no perfect tool for all occasions. While the shark is maneuverable and highly armored, you lack visibility, and your forward-facing guns puts you at a disadvantage in a merge compared to maybe an Apache's articulate gun or a Gazelle's agility or door gunners. Your strength is standoff range in that you have amongst the longest reach missiles, which don't even need a lock, and the sniper cannon. Rear angle shots might often have a chance of removing a tail rotor and less chances of the target spotting the launch and better odds of an Igla seeing the heat source. That said, maybe a side-on hit is more effective, being a larger target for stray cannon rounds or missiles, and more of the fuselage is in range if the missile airbursts on the fringes of the rotor. Maybe. And maybe hits from above or below are also more damaging, but these are not really conditions you can control. Whether you can wait for the optimal conditions to shoot, need to take it out before it launches, or can't risk approaching closer due to enemy SAMs, that will change your options. Ultimately, who spots who first and can sneak into range to get a hit will win. If you're not hunting unarmed helos, keep your eyes peeled, stay patient, scan out areas rigorously, change course frequently when your spider sense tingles, and consider staying low so other helos are contrasted by the sky, and most of all, get some other intel like AWACS or other players calling out positions. Big sky out there, a lot of places to hide. And if there aren't friendlies in danger and the conditions are unfavorable, stay in cover, draw them back to your SAM defenses. This is Volk, happy hunting.